Welcome back to the channel, guys. It's Irad, and so in today's video we are going to react to a video from a buddy of mine, somebody that I hugely respect for his content creation skills. It's Morphologis, who is of course very famous in the Star Citizen community, but I believe he also made some PlanetSide 2 content before that. Anyway, he also played Star Wars Outlaws, and Morphologis, I trust him. He usually says the way it is. He's not going to lie, or is not going to pretend he likes something if he does not, and so I think that's going to be a trusted source. He is so lucky him. He got to play for 4 hours. That's what you can do when you have so many subscribers. Please help good old Irad subscribe to the channel if you want me to one day perhaps have the chance to do something like that. Anyway, let's check it out here and let's see what he thinks of Star Wars Outlaws.
Expectation and speculation is a fickle but powerful tool in the toolbox of developers. It's a good way to shore up support and excitement for your game, but if you let it run away...
That's actually some wisdom here that we got from Star Citizen, right? It's very important to manage your expectations, because if your expectations are not in adequation to what the developers are actually announcing that they're going to give, then it's actually your fault if you're disappointed because you didn't know exactly what you would be getting. So it's really important to know what you're going to be getting before you get into a game here. And I really like the warning here, that the caveat, perhaps I should say, that Morphologis is starting here, starting this video with.
Away from you, then you create a double-edged lightsaber that can
That's
come
a nice
back
view.
and destroy a game when it would have otherwise been great if you'd have just set expectations correctly.
There
and that's
you go.
Unfortunately what I think is happening with Star Wars Outlaws. This past week I had the opportunity...
Now that's true. That's true. And I think that managing our expectations is something that the devs have done quite well over the past month, especially with all of those IGN vignettes that we've seen over the past couple of weeks, right? Because at first, when I first heard, oh, we're gonna have an open world Star Wars game, and we're gonna be able to explore several planets and go into space, I thought, wow, we're gonna have some seamless transition, and we're gonna have dozens of planets to go to. No, we are only going to have 5, and it's not seamless transition from ground to space. But at least we know it, right? And at least we got to see that it's probably going to be better than Starfield as well in terms of gaming experience. So that's something that I think has been useful, right? Although a lot of people have been disappointed. I've seen on the internet that a lot of people have said that this game looks like trash. I see that in the comment section as well, a lot, right? A lot of you guys are not interested in this game. That's okay. As far as I'm concerned, I'm willing to give it a try and see what it's worth.
Opportunity to sit down and play Star Wars Outlaws early for a total of 4 hours, where I got to tour
lucky him.
Shara, the spacescape in between with some space combat, and the landing zone of Kajimi with a short mission. And what stuck out to me initially was just how handcrafted and detailed the world of Tashara felt.
And that is a huge difference compared to all of the other games that we have, you know, Starfield, Star Citizen, No Man's Sky, Elite Dangerous, of course, where all of these worlds are procedurally generated, and it feels, right, they feel barren, they feel lifeless, they feel boring. At least, you know, since everything is handcrafted there, it seems interesting. It seems that there's a purpose, right? It's a developer's imagination, vision that we're seeing in those landscapes, and I think that's also going to be making quite a difference.
Everything seemed like it was designed with intention, that somebody was behind every aspect of every piece of architecture, every curve of the hill, every outpost, and this is actually the kind of thing that I was hoping to see in an open world game. One of the things that I've become a little bit sick of is seeing the kind of auto-generated spaces that become samey after a while, which we got with games like Starfield and even to some extent No Man's Sky, even though that's a highly stylized game with a focus in exploration.
I have a different... that's Morphologis' idea. It's a very stylized game. That's one way of saying it. I think it looks terrible. Not terrible, but it looks... I don't like the style. Let's just say it's like you like it or you don't like it, right? For me, I would prefer something that looks a bit more realistic, something that makes us really feel immersed in the game as if we were really there. that's one thing here in Star Wars Outlaws that I think is missing is the first-person view. I feel much more immersed in first-person view, but anyway, that's definitely another debate for another video.
Probably the route I should have expected to see them going. But the thing is that when you say open world Star Wars game, the thing that comes to mind is a space game. You show spaceships, you show planets, and the mind starts to create this fiction that is going to be something like No Man's Sky, something like Elite Dangerous or Star Citizen, when in reality, that was never really their intention. They're coming from a background of creating games like Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, The Division, all of which can be argued are open world games, but have ultimately limited play spaces. And that's exactly what this game is.
I see, right? So limited play. There was I remember that they were saying that you can cross the map from one end to another in like 5 minutes. So that really seems limited. But at the same time, if it is crammed with a lot of content, right? We feel interrupted by checking out something there and something there, and we get hailed by some NPCs because we need to do some side quests, and I suppose that's okay.
The total size of the map of Tashar, which is only one of 5 planets we'll be able to visit, has a total area that I could see of around 9 square kilometers or 3.5 square miles.
Oh, yeah, that is small. That is small.
With a total longest distance of 4 kilometers. And I think a lot of people are going to get hung up on this. In fact, you may already be typing down below in the comment section about how you're disappointed in the size, and I don't blame you for doing so. Again, it's about setting the correct expectation. But in my experience playing in this open world space, I never really got the impression that I was limited. I was constantly running across NPCs going about their business, running across towns that needed my support for helping them.
And this is something that I've seen in all of these videos, is that this game does not feel lifeless. It feels like there's life everywhere. There's always something going on. And I think, in my opinion, this is one of the biggest strengths of Star Wars Outlaws. And that's also why I want to check it out.
Fend off a group of attacking pirates, getting hung up on some faction rep that was limiting me from going to certain locations on the map. And this experience extended on into the cities like Miragana, the main landing area on Tashara. They did a really good job of making the city feel like it's part of the Star Wars universe, having that lived-in, retro-futuristic style that's the hallmark of architecture in this universe. But also, just as important, there are NPCs...
Now, of course, for those of you who don't know Morphologis, he's an architect, so I'm glad to see him telling us a little bit about the architecture of the game.
Inhabiting this space to give it life. Those NPCs are going about their business and also having conversations that matter, that if you overhear, can lead you to new missions or stashes you may have overlooked.
That's really cool. That's cool.
Even react to your actions as you progress through the story, talking about rumors of things this new Outworlder has done to the local criminal gang. So it's very clear to me that Ubisoft, instead of focusing on creating
I don't know if you noticed, but there was like some dialogue on the side, and it says in Huttese. I love it also that they have all the NPCs talking in not English, but other languages that are native to the Star Wars universe, of course. But it's something that I don't like in a lot of games. Like, it's always, English. Even in Star Citizen, it's all English. There's like nothing French. There's a little bit of German or Chinese sometimes, but that's about it. It's very English centered, and here they put some Huttese and other types of languages that we are going to be hearing in the Star Wars universe, and that's great. It's going to feel it's going to give us a little sense of exotism in this kind of game, this sense of being in the world that's foreign to us. And when I play this kind of game, that's the kind of feeling that I want to have, and that's awesome.
Very expensive and time-intensive tools for crafting big, open, but ultimately empty worlds instead focus their attention and budget inwards on creating and crafting a highly detailed, densely packed environment that's akin more to something like we would have seen in the movies than something that we experienced in, again, Starfield. But once you're done with exploring the ground and you're ready to go up into space, here I can confirm that there is indeed a animated sequence that takes you from ground to space and space to ground, just like we saw in the preview in the video I posted earlier. It's basically an animation, but one that's done particularly well, where there's a good transition from the space experience to the ground experience that feels seamless, even though it's not, which I think makes it pretty successful. Now, when you get up into space, the spacescape that you're able to explore is also expansive but limited. There's going to be hard borders, but even though there are borders, there are still things to experience, and they're relatively densely packed compared to what you might see out of a...
Okay, so you don't have to go inside that gas cloud, right? There's a lot of black space as well.
True spacescape simulation where there are immense distances between any kind of stellar object or point of interest. So it's definitely going for that more Star Wars-esque space theme where it's focusing on the visual spectacle of the experience of flying in space. And just like on the ground, there are NPCs.
That's a cool starship here. I don't recognize this. I mean, from the far side, I thought it was a dreadnought, but it's not.
Going about their business. There are freighters. There are pirates that you'll interact with and fight. There are factions in space as well that will either help you or attack you depending on your standing with them. So there are things to experience in the space to keep you immersed while you're going about your business or participating in actual missions. And the planets also look really good.
I have to say that I wished I had seen that kind of fight with that kind of dynamic. Well, it looked quite dynamic from what I saw there. That was great. That was some really cool footage here from Morph. I wish I had seen that before. This gets me excited. I like that. That's what I want to see in a Star Wars game. I want to see some dynamic, space combat. Have some fun, blow stuff up, and that's what it looked like. All right.
Even though I don't think they're fully simulated, certainly you can't fly around them, they do have a kind of parallax effect as you're flying through space, either to or from them or perpendicular to them. They have this kind of movement that makes it feel like you're traversing space at high speed. And since we're talking about the spacescape, I think it's also now worth talking about the space simulation part of it, the way that you fly your ship in the game. And well, it's basically as you might have expected from the Star Wars genre in general. Pretty much every single game I've played in the Star Wars universe has been arcadey, where it's like you're flying a space plane. That's basically like what happens in the movies. The X-Wings and the TIE Fighters fly.
That's how it is in the movies, right? They are reproducing the flight models of the movie.
Like there's air resistance. They're banking and rolling and turning. They're not flipping end over end like Battlestar Galactica. Like there's actual 6 degrees of freedom. But that doesn't mean it's not fun. It, in fact, was really fun. I got into some space combat with some pirates and tried to disable a freighter, which involved going after some of the subsystems in order to disable it. So there are some mechanics in space to worry about, like shields and repairs and trying to target subsystems, but there's nothing as advanced as like
it's
getting out of your ship seat and walking around your ship to repair things and regulating your system's power, balance, or and it's not even really as complex as, say, Star Wars Squadrons, which I think is a good comparison in terms of how the ships fly, but not in terms of the
ships flew great in Star Wars Squadrons. It's one of the few good points of Squadrons. What's this?
But I wanted to circle back to 2 more points of concern for me going into this, and that was Kay and the combat of Star Wars Outlaws. And I gotta say that over the time I played with her for the 4 hours I got to enjoy the game, I actually really did like my time with her. She grew on me along with her little klepto cat Nix, and that's, I think,
I have to say that the more I watch videos of her, she's also growing on me. At first I was like, nah, she looks so boring, she looks so plain, but maybe it's not just how the character looks, right? It's also how it's voice acted. Sometimes a great voice acting can also make a difference. So I want to give her a chance.
Because she's really well voice acted and to bring a lot of life to her, making her stand out a bit more than I thought she would. She doesn't feel like a cardboard cutout or a stand-in for a better character that we might have had. That being said, she definitely has a kind of Han Solo feel to her. I feel like they pitched
By the way, I
as
really like that little joke here where she says, you don't have to pay me to stay with you. This guy's laughing. Is like, he's like, of course, I pay all these guys. This feels so embarrassed, but at the same time, you feel like she's right. I loved it. I love this sequence so much, by the way, and I cannot wait to see that in game for myself. But that's actually a really cool preview that we got from the game.
Well, and that's not a bad thing because her personality is unique to her. She's definitely not a carbon copy female version of Han Solo, but that scoundrel thing is quite familiar and actually a part of her I really like. But she also has a vulnerable side to her which also endeared me to her a bit more. There's definitely some tragedy in her background, which is always a good setup for an interesting protagonist. Speaking of vulnerability, by the way, I think that's a good segue into the combat part that I wanted to talk about with Outlaws. There was a lot made of Kay's invulnerability from...
Yeah. Well, that's because we've been burnt before with Star Wars, right? With super powerful female characters that are invulnerable and unrealistic. What we want to see is to see this character grow from being a noob to being a decent smuggler. Maybe not the best, but at least a decent who could pull something off, right? And we want to work hard. We want to see her work hard for that. That's super important. And I think that if the developers manage to pull this off, then I think that we can have a win here. Even though, well, the character doesn't look so great, but if she's well voice acted and if her progression makes sense, I think that we can do something interesting with this game.
Some previews that came out last week from IGN. And I don't think that was a very fair representation of the actual gameplay experience when you're playing Outlaws. She's a lot more vulnerable than that. She's more vulnerable than Cal Kestis even ever was as a Padawan. 3 to 4 shots or a couple grenades will kill her in combat, and that's on normal difficulty. But that doesn't mean there aren't any combat sequences or that they won't happen. There are moments that combat is unavoidable, but you're punished for standing out in the open and rewarded instead for taking cover. In fact, that 3-shot combo thing that people were kind of going on about wasn't as OP as it seemed. Her 3-shot lock-on ability is only able to charge up from taking cover, and I want to underline taking cover. So standing out in the open is not going to enable you to constantly use this.
That's great. So she's not a tank, right? She's got to sneak around and then strike.
The story can also be completed much more quickly and easily if you stealth through the location and only take out who you need to. I had to replay one mission because I was too slow to react to take down one of the enemies before they alerted the others, causing waves and waves of pike enemies to come out shooting at me. The problem was that the end of the level was locked behind a lock-picking mechanic which couldn't be completed if I was interrupted by being shot at. I think I spent a whole of like 5 minutes diving and defending and healing before I eventually died. And granted though, I want to say that I was on a controller on a remote session that created a lot of difficulty for me with latency and response. But that's just how the demos were done in this case, and since I'm in Taiwan, I had like a 200 ping to the US server, and that's not how you are going to experience the game. It's not an online game that you play remotely. This is just purely for the demo. I want to be...
So the game actually punishes you. I like that. The game punishes you if you are not stealthy. I mean, you can succeed eventually, right? But it's going to be much harder. That's actually a really cool game mechanism here.
Perfectly clear on that. Anyway, after dying, I passed the area in about a minute just by picking off who I needed to and sneaking my way through the entrance after disabling the security systems. I think it's also worth talking about the stealth mechanics here. Stealth is really rewarding outside of the heat of battle because you have more time to scope out possible valuables or locate better routes to the objective to get things done more efficiently. On stealth mechanics, the game behaves similarly to other games that you might have played, where there's a grace period to hide or disable an enemy before they raise an alarm. For Kay though, her little kleptocat Nyx has some great abilities that I found myself using a lot, like the ability to...
I like the fact that Kay can just grab on the head and that NPC just doesn't know what to do. That's
search
really cool.
For important objects in the area, or to use or disable panels, or the ability to distract enemies.
So basically you're a team
other
with
parts of the map to blow
here.
something up, to draw them in that direction to clear an area, or to just jump straight on the enemy so that you have a moment to come up and knock them out. And Nyx can also nick things. I don't think her name's a coincidence here. You can use her abilities to either grab an extra buck or to actually steal some important things for a mission to get a better route. Enemies also don't seem to notice Nyx as much or not really care about her, so she's great for like looting items that are a bit too risky for you to approach directly. The more you seem to leverage her, the better things seem to go in missions, so it makes her more than just a set dressing, but an extension of the regular mechanics you'll find.
Yeah, it's like a very long arm where, oh, grab this and then come back, right? That's
yourself using in virtually every part of the game. I also want to say that I just generally really like Nyx, and I really hope that they...
I know my buddy DG doesn't like Nyx, but I like Nyx.
Don't do anything to her. And
oh no, they won't. Come on, they she's not gonna die. They are going to sell merchandise, of course.
Well, this combat is tinged with the prospect of reputation. It does more than just restrict where you can go in a map and where you have to sneak around and who you can rely on to help you. It also affects, for example, what you can buy. If you've got poor rep with an owning faction, the area that sells things that's owned by them might not want to sell to you for a low price. They might jack it up or not sell you things at all. And this reputation affects your relationships with the characters you meet and what missions you're able to get.
Oh, look at this is going to be such difficult choices to make, right? You know, betray a clan that you've been working with or help them out.
In effect, then, this mechanic is not just a novelty, it's something that creates meaningful consequences that will weigh on your decisions that you make throughout the gameplay experience, and will presumably affect the outcome of the game. But I only played 4 hours, so I can't say what endings are available to Kay depending on the decision of who you side with. So yeah.
All right. That's really cool. That's really cool. I'm really looking forward to seeing this. Huge shout out to Morphologis for pulling this video out. Let me know what you guys think of Star Wars Outlaws. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you guys in the next one.